Welcome to the Political Insider. Just before we kick off, let me please remind you to subscribe to the channel. Let's get this sucker cooking. This information is way too important to be speaking to small audiences. We need to get this out to everybody. Let's start off with our first story. What is going on in the Ministry of Transport? You know, it's sort of been accepted that one of the ANC's best ministers has been Barbara Creecy, but she seems to be keeping a damning forensic report revealing billions in irregular expenditure hidden from the people whose money is being stolen. You and I, the taxpayer, the people that the ANC will not trust. Barbara Creecy has ignored pleas to release this report. There is a report that where action should be taken that involves billions of rand of irregular expenditure. And on top of it, PRASA employees have been accused of the misconduct, and instead of charging them, they let off the hook because it would be politically inconvenient to do anything about this particular crime. Let me explain to you what has happened here. It's a beautiful story, and who does it include? That wonderful name we haven't heard for a little while, Edwin Sodi. Remember Edwin Sodi, the ANC's favorite BEE tenderpreneur? He tries to moonlight as a sort of a sort of engineering business, but everything he touches seems to turn to mud, and there's always the stench of corruption on everything that he does. In this case, he had help from the inside. Head of PRASA's Technical Rolling Stock Department, Molefe Mosweu, he laughed at the fact that Edwin Sodi is being investigated by SARS to the extent of 400 million rand, and said it would be small fish if SARS came along looking at this little thing that they've got going. Masuya said the tax bill for the suspected money laundering vehicle, KGE projects, would dwarf the 400 million rand if the tax agency paid him a visit. For his trouble, Molefe Mosweu, he received more than 4 million rand in bribes from PRASA contractors. Nice business if you can get it. He's working for PRASA, he's taking bribes. How did he do it? Well, he established a front company called KGE Projects and installed his brother-in-law as a director and the front of the company. And Masuya and KGE Projects accepted millions in bribes in exchange for allocating the work to certain contractors for a 7.5 billion rand project. There's a lot of money to share when you've got a 7.5 billion rand project. I don't care how big whatever the project is. It's a lot of money. That's 7,500 million rand. It's just, the numbers are just, 7.5 billion rand, 7,500 million rand. It's a lot of money. Sodi's company on one particular contract received 40% of the work, or 969 million rand in revenue from one project. Right? That's nearly 1 billion rand in one project that was worth just over 2 billion rand. He receives nearly half of it. And this has all been revealed in a report prepared by the reputable law firm Weber Wenzel, who did the report on behalf of PRASA. Now, these law firms are making a fortune. We've had this discussion before. The law firms will get contracted to do these forensic reports. They do these forensic reports. They get sent to the minister, whoever paid using our tax money for these reports. And then if they don't like the outcome, they don't release the report. This report was done by Weber Wenzel in November 2024. It is late March 2026. It still hasn't been revealed. November 2024 was already past the time that the government of national unity has been established, but yet we haven't heard the noise. Now, before everybody says, what is the DA doing? What are the other 8 parties doing? Because I haven't heard this from anybody. So it is a DA problem. It's, of course, it's what we expect from the ANC, but where are the other voices? Where's the Freedom Front Plus? Where's the Patriotic Alliance? Silly me, we know where the Patriotic Alliance is. They're whining and dining the president. But where are all these other parties that are also in this government of national unity? Where's the IFP? But both PRASA and the Transport Ministry refused to release this report. And they claimed that they were implementing the recommendations of the report. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We haven't seen the reports and we don't know what the recommendations are. None of the accused employees were ever charged with any misconduct, never mind any any crimes. They have not been charged, nor have they tried to even recover any of the stolen taxpayer money from any of the contractors. So I'm not sure what Webber Wentzel would have recommended, but either they're going to recommend that you take some action against those people, or you try and get the money back, or both. It's logic. But no, this is South Africa. We just let it slide. And instead, PRASA confirmed that they're proceeding with the contract. They've already paid out more than 4 billion rand. That's 4,000 million rand to these contractors. And this stinks to high heaven. Barbara Creecy, we've invited on the show. She won't come on the show. Barbara Creecy never, ever speaks to the public. Right? And instead, this, we understand, was one of the famous scenes of the crime. Let's not forget that Brian Molefe was the CEO of Transnet. With that guy, Anoj Singh, they then moved them all to Eskom after they depleted all the money at Transnet. So we understand that she assumed a broken transport ministry, and she assumed it from the worst minister of all time, and that was Fikile Mbalula. And I presume on purpose, he allowed the whole transport infrastructure to be degraded to the point where you have to spend a fortune like this to try and get the service back running. But this is just ridiculous. You're meant to be a clean minister. If you're a clean minister, don't you trust us to see the report? I can promise you, Minister, we are adults. We go out there, we make a living. We know how the world works. Release the report. We'll handle it. We'll deal with it. You don't have to keep it secret from us. Before we carry on, we've got a business breakfast, 16th of April. Prince Mashele, JJ Tabani. You couldn't get two better commentators. They are going to disagree. It's going to be a very, very exciting breakfast in Sandton. If you want more information, go visit our website, sona.co.za. Book your place. Come and join us there. Let's have some fun at that breakfast. To continue from our story, our first story, there were some interesting latest crime statistics. They made for some very interesting reading. Because despite the fact that it may not feel like it, the murder rate is down. The robbery rate is down. Sexual offenses are down. Car theft is even down. But there's one type of crime that has nearly doubled in the last decade. And that is commercial crime. In other words, companies stealing money or people stealing money from other companies, right? There were 76,774 cases of commercial crimes in 2013-2014. That figure is now 143,600 in 2024-2025. Now, I do understand that the police almost no longer exists. We see it every day at the Madlanga Commission, where a general spends more time consorting with criminals than they do in doing their jobs. We understand that the police is hollowed out. But my word, listen to something that's absolutely astounding. The South African commercial crime industry is worth 396 billion rand. When converted to rand, the US commercial crime industry is only worth 37 billion rand. Ours is nearly more than 10 times the size as it is in the US. The UK has 54 billion rand in commercial crimes, if you convert their crimes into rand. Why? Because they have police. Why? Because they have their tax officials that don't go after the poor salary earner. They actually go after the criminals. So in other words, the criminal has got the advantage of doing whatever they like in South Africa. Overseas, they know that the police are going to get them, so they do less of it. Right now, this, to make matters worse, our 396 billion rand, which is a criminal number, is only based on commercial crimes where the value is more than 500,000 rand. So in other words, if you manage to do a commercial crime, I don't know, you're dealing in illicit copper or whatever it is, but it's only for 400,000 rand, you wouldn't even be in these numbers. So it's a staggering amount of money. And this is why we've got some of the problems we've got. Let's move on a little. Let's ask is whether the war in the Middle East could actually lead the South African government and the government of national unity to actually do something useful. You know, sometimes you need a shock. You need things to go in a different direction before you act. South Africa is in an absolute bind because of the war in the Middle East. We can't get oil. And South Africa has found itself so uniquely vulnerable when it comes to oil because we now import so much oil. What has gone wrong? Why are we so vulnerable? Well, let's understand that prior to the last decade, South Africa had refining capacity of more than 700,000 barrels per day. We now have less than a third of that quantity available. Why is that important? Well, when we can refine our own oil, we can just, turn that crude oil into fuel that we run our vehicles on and run many machines on and so on and so forth. It meant that we could just import the crude. It can come straight out of the oil well, go straight into the tanker, come here, fill up our refineries, and we would then turn it into the fuel. No. Instead, the ANC decided to chase away many of the companies that were operating the refineries, and we saw a rash of them. It was all ahead of the 2024 election. Shell, Total, all of the oil majors left the country. Why? Because of our policies. Remember the same policies that America are crying about. Now, these companies aren't American companies. In most cases, they're European companies or Middle Eastern companies. They couldn't take enough of the government's policies. They also couldn't work with dodgy infrastructure. You need pipelines. You need ports that work. You need all kinds of things. They eventually decided that they are tired of putting up with 100% of the risk and 50% of the profit. So they cut their losses and said goodbye. Now we sit with a situation where we only refine less than 1/3 of the oil that we need. The rest we have to import finished product. In other words, when it gets onto the boat, it must be petrol already. And it comes in and it goes straight out to the pumps. We, on top of it, decided to put in cleaner fuels regulations. Now, this was half with best intentions. We all want the environment to be better, and largely because of a big bribe from the first world, especially the EU, the European Union. And they saw the money that was being offered, and it was in billions, and it was in dollars, and the comrades' eyes rolled to the back of their heads as they thought, here's another opportunity. And all we needed to do was gut our own lifeline, which is oil and refining and running our vehicles, until we could improve at the pace that we can improve. They said that we needed to retrofit our refineries. And the government then got the money to do it, decided not to support the refineries. That, on top of all of the other stuff that we mentioned, said to these people, we are gone. Now we've got a thing called the Strategic Fuel Fund. They manage 45 million barrels of oil in Saldanha Bay. They hold oil in these big concrete tanks, right? But they hold crude oil, and we don't have the ability to refine it, or we can only refine very little of it. So we've got 6 of these big concrete tanks that we can store things, but we only use 2 of them because they've rented out the other 4 to international oil traders who make money out of storing fuel and then selling it when it's more expensive, buying when it's cheap and selling when it's more expensive, right? So the government itself is not acting in our interest. On top of this, if you think it's hard enough that we've got a problem with crude oil, we're going to have a problem with gas in 2028 because we get most of our gas from Mozambique, but those fields are almost depleted. We get a little bit of gas from Sasol, but that gas is nearly depleted as well. This is going to cost between 70,000 and 100,000 jobs in the local manufacturing sector. Now, we do have significant potential that we've seen work in places like America, and it's called shale. It's fracking, and it's in the Karoo, and we've got environmental problems in getting to this source of oil. America has become completely self-dependent, self-supplying when it comes to fuel. South Africa could do the same thing. We have a $1 billion barrel capacity in the Outeniqua Basin. It's just off the coast. But the oil majors decided to exit this because this is quite deep in the water, quite a complex thing. But of course, the government wants to get its grubby little paws and they want to tell them who to give contracts to for doing no work. Instead, Total and Qatar Energies decided to develop the Orange River Basin, hoping to mirror their 30 billion barrel discovery in Namibia. We now have a different environmental minister in Willie Oukamp from the DA, who I think was brought in to do a job specifically like this. The 2 preceding environmental ministers have been Dion George and Barbara Creasy, and both of them have acted as big handbrakes towards us producing our own fuel. But now Willie Oukamp, who seems to be very happy to relax those rules, maybe some of Gwede Mantashe's inclinations might get an audience from the environmental ministry, and we might see people acting with the urgency that we need, where we can become self-sufficient on fuel. As they say, never waste a crisis. And let's hope that we don't waste this particular crisis, because it is a crisis. I think if the war in the Middle East has proven anything, and that is at any price become self-sufficient when it comes to your own energy, South Africa could do it. We choose not to. Let's hope that it happens now. Thank you so much for joining us on The Political Insider. Remember to subscribe to the channel, come to our breakfast, and we'll see you again soon.